Hello and welcome. I'm Jono Hayes and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. The UK Prime Minister announces that the UK will recognise Palestine as a state by September. That's unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire deal. In New York, 4 people are dead, including a police officer, after a gunman opens fire inside a Manhattan skyscraper. And the Kremlin responds to Trump's deadline ultimatum, defending its ongoing military operations in Ukraine as 17 people are killed by a Russian airstrike. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has announced that the UK will recognise Palestine as a state by September. That's unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire deal. Earlier today, Starmer recalled his cabinet from their summer recess early for an emergency meeting on the ongoing conflict. And here's how he made that announcement.
I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank.
Let's go live now to London to speak to the Deputy Editor of Spectator, Freddie Gray. Freddie, thanks for joining us. This significant announcement from Starmer just in the last few minutes about the two-state solution. Was this expected when he recalled government from recess?
Well, he was certainly under a lot of pressure to recognise Palestine as a state from his MPs. It was more of a domestic crisis than an international one for Labour internally, because they had this huge pressure from their backbenches and from their voters to do something about Palestine, to speak out against Israel, and to address the humanitarian situation in a meaningful way. This sort of, we will recognise Palestine as a state at the UN in September if you don't agree to a ceasefire, is a new development. And it strikes me as a slightly odd one, because what it suggests is that if Israel does suddenly agree to a ceasefire and flood the area with humanitarian aid, then Labour will not recognise Palestine as a state. What it's essentially saying is that it will recognise Palestine as a state if it's being persecuted and oppressed. This is an odd dynamic, and it feels to me a little bit like a sort of desperate measure from a group of people who wanted to go on summer holiday, have been dragged back because of a crisis within their government, and have come up with this as a sort of fudged solution.
Do you think, Freddie, that Swinney and Starmer had this conversation when they were in Scotland? It seems very hot on the foot of that visit. Maybe Trump had an influence because, as we know, the US have boycotted the two-state UN meeting that's been taking place in New York. So was there maybe a conversation that went on in Turnberry that was about this?
I think they were very keen to push Donald Trump to make a statement about the suffering of the people in Palestine. I think that what he did say, that it was horrible to see images of starving children, and that has been turned into a shift from Donald Trump. But if you listen to what he said in the round, he was still very much focusing on Israeli hostages. He was careful not to say anything too critical of Israel. And so Trump didn't really shift, but he gave them the quote that enabled them to say feel that Trump has shifted his position, and therefore America is a bit more on side than it was. I think they might have been overspinning that a little bit. But certainly they got what they wanted because they did want Trump to appear to be on board so that they could shift their own position in favour of Palestine.
You did mention at the onset as well, but this announcement seems a bit like international diplomacy, but maybe there's domestic pressure as well from the UK voters. Do you think that it's potentially that which has caused Keir Starmer to come out and say, we will recognise, given the time, at the United Nations in September, Palestine as a state?
Undoubtedly. One has to remember that Keir Starmer became leader off the back of his campaign against anti-Semitism in the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn. So he's always been very, very nervous about criticising Israel, about distancing himself from Israel. He has ties to Israel. So he's not comfortable in a position where he's antagonizing Israel and even Bibi Netanyahu. So it's definitely to do with intense pressure from his voters and also a threat to Labour's left from Gaza independents, that's Muslim independents, who are taking up a lot of Muslim voters in urban areas, taking them away from Labour. And that's in the future potentially a serious electoral problem for Labour. So he has a big, big domestic problem when it comes to this issue. And that's what he's trying to address first and foremost.
So do you think that's what we're seeing here, Freddie? Is Labour shifting its tone on the Palestinian statehood? A political shift, political optics? What's at play here, do you think?
Well, I suppose I am sounding quite cynical. I think there are a lot of Labour people, including people in the Labour cabinet, who are sincerely concerned because the images are terrible. It's a terrible situation. And they want something to be done. That's certainly true. But I mean, I am cynical because I've been following Westminster for a while. And when governments take actions like this, it's usually because there's some domestic pressure, there's some threat to their own authority, to their own coalition. And Labour has a huge majority, but a huge majority of Labour MPs want their government to do something about this. So that's what's going on. That's the driving factor.
Let's talk about Trump for a second. His instinct for public mood, which is to the fore once again. Do you think his remarks while he was there in Turnberry, are they marking a bit of a broader change in Western rhetoric, that combined with Keir Starmer's announcement today?
Yes, certainly. I think Trump has a gut level instinct, or some might say even genius, for what most people are thinking. And the point is, particularly in the last month, last couple of weeks, most people have started to think, hang on, what Israel needs to stop. This is getting out of control. This situation is truly terrible, and it's unambiguously terrible now. So, yes, I think Trump will understand that at a sort of gut level. At the same time, though, he's very close to Israel, has been for some time. His policies as a president have often been aligned with Israel. If you think about the first term, the Abraham Accords and so on, these were great strides in many ways in the Middle East, but they were what Israel wanted. Israel, in some ways, dictated Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East and has done also this term with Iran and so on. So, yeah, I think instinctively he understands that the public mood has changed, but he's also very connected to Israel, is unwilling to upset even Netanyahu, who he has problems with.
Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor of The Spectator, thank you so much for joining us on W News. We will continue this conversation. Olga Cherevko, who is joining us, the spokesperson for OCA in Gaza. Olga, first of all, can you describe the humanitarian situation that's on the ground in Gaza, especially for the children?
Thank you so much for having me. The situation here, I'm struggling to find really the words for it anymore because the levels to which it has deteriorated is really unimaginable. I was out today in Gaza City. I saw children of all ages picking through giant piles of trash, just looking for some scraps to eat. People everywhere are asking for food. That is the first thing they ask you for. And one interesting thing I actually heard today was that the rubbish collection employees have noticed a 70% decrease in the amount of rubbish that is being discarded in Gaza recently, which is a very stark sign that there's nothing left to discard.
Olga, Israel's saying that they're introducing these tactical pauses and increasing the aid as well. Are you seeing it make any difference on the ground in real terms in Gaza?
Well, it's a welcome decision, and we certainly hope that it leads to better access, to more aid being able to enter, and for our enabling of our job. We have noticed some improvements, and this is a positive step in the right direction, but much more needs to be done, of course. We have seen some reduction in security incidents along the routes that are supposed to have these tactical pauses, but not enough. And more needs, again, the routes need to be introduced. More security needs to be provided in terms of people not being shot and killed and injured alongside convoys who are waiting to get food, and of course the volume of supplies. And ultimately, what we've said all along, since we cannot do this alone as a humanitarian community, we need commercial supplies to be entering as well.
The Israeli rhetoric seems to be that Hamas are intercepting the aid at every possible opportunity. Are you seeing any evidence of that while you're there in Gaza?
Well, we've had these very long-standing restrictions and constraints placed on us, which have created this very unpredictable environment of when and if aid is coming. So at the moment, because of this unpredictability, there's a lack of confidence within these communities themselves that aid is coming and that they will be able to get it at any point. So anytime a convoy enters now, the road that follows to its destination, it is met by thousands, tens of thousands of hungry and desperate people who basically offload the flour directly off the trucks.
Are you seeing any impact from the air-delivered aid, which we're hearing about at the moment? Has that had any noticeable effect on people on the ground?
Well, we also welcome, of course, these efforts to provide aid that is much needed and long overdue. But there is really no alternative to the scale of assistance that can be brought in by land. So we have always said that this is really the most effective and efficient way to bring assistance. It allows vulnerable people to receive it in a way that can reach them, so it doesn't exclude certain elements of the population. And
I think we've just lost Olga temporarily there, but we will try and return to her in just a second. Olga Sherakova, who's the spokesperson for OCHA in Gaza, thank you so much for joining us on that. Let's take a look at some of the other stories that are making the top headlines today. Trade negotiations between the US and China have entered a second day in Stockholm in Sweden. The talks came a day after President Trump reached a deal with the EU which will see exports to the US taxed at 15%. Next week is crucial for Beijing as the US plans to impose tariffs of 145% on Chinese goods should a deal not be reached by August the 12th. Military commanders from Thailand and Cambodia have held discussions following peace talks, which has led to a ceasefire. During the meeting, Thai military accused Cambodian troops of violating the truce, saying they continued launching armed attacks. Thailand estimates over $300 million in economic damage from the border conflict with Cambodia. President Trump has opened a brand new 18-hole golf course in Aberdeenshire in the resort in Scotland on the final day of his trip to the UK. The construction of this new course, which began in 2023, is dedicated to Trump's mother, who was born on the Isle of Lewis. The US president will return to Great Britain in September for a state visit when he will stay with King Charles at Windsor Castle. And China has introduced a financial incentive to its citizens in order to boost the declining birth rate. The government said it will pay families $500 every year per baby until the child turns 3. The handouts will help around 20 million families with the cost of raising children. That's according to state media. To New York now, where 4 people, including a police officer, have been killed after a gunman stormed a Park Avenue skyscraper in Manhattan on Monday night. The attacker, 27-year-old Shane Tamura from Las Vegas, opened fire in the lobby before he took the lift to the 33rd floor. Later, he shot himself dead. The city's mayor, Eric Adams, has given a statement and paid tribute to the slain officer. Have a listen to this.
We lost 4 souls to another senseless act of gun violence, including a member of the New York City Police Department, Officer Islam. He served in the 47th Precinct. He was just 36 years old and a 3.5-year veteran of the department. He was doing what he does best, and all members of the police department carry out. He was saving lives. He was protecting New Yorkers. He's an immigrant from Bangladesh, and he loved his city.
For more on this, let's go live to New York. The latest on this story with our correspondent, Mitch McCann. Mitch, first of all, talk us through how this attack actually unfolded inside the building, and tell us what we know about this gunman and his motives, especially considering the huge cross-country journey he made in order to get to New York.
Yeah, that's right. Good afternoon from New York. Police say 27-year-old Shane Devon Tamura had driven from Nevada to Manhattan in recent days, which is a very long journey from one side of the United States to the other. And they say he left his car parked outside 345 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan and walked into the large commercial building. Now, once inside, police say he opened fire on Didirul Islam, the police officer who was working off-duty as a security guard, killing him, as well as a woman named Wesley Lapatna, who was an employee at the investment management firm in that building, Blackstone. Now, he also shot 2 other people who haven't been named by authorities yet. It's then reported the shooter took one of the elevator banks more than 30 floors up the building, ending up at the office of the building's management company, where he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A very tragic story, but of course, yes, his motive is unknown at this stage, although there is reports that he left a note inside his wallet that talked about the brain condition CTE and the National Football League, which is also housed in that building.
Shane, what do we know, what do we know about the victims so far, particularly the officer who has been referred to as a hero? Now, you briefly mentioned the organisations that are in that Blackstone, but also the NFL, which we're led to believe was somewhat specifically targeted.
Yeah, that's right. Well, firstly, to answer the first part of your question, Officer Islam was 36 years old, and as Eric Adams said at that clip you played earlier, he is a 3-year veteran of the New York City Police Department. He's also an immigrant from Bangladesh. It's reported he has 2 children, and his wife is currently pregnant with their 3rd child. Eric Adams reiterated the point you heard earlier. He said he was saving lives, he was protecting New Yorkers. He is a true blue New Yorker, not only in the uniform he wore. A close family friend told the New York Times earlier today he wanted to support his family and be in a better position, and he fell in love with law enforcement while working in security earlier in his life. Now, as for the buildings he targeted, this is interesting, and this is really a new development. It's thought he was targeting the headquarters of the NFL, or the National Football League, according to Eric Adams earlier today. That is suspected because there was a note, as I mentioned, found inside his wallet, which he claimed he had the brain disease CTE, which is sometimes suffered by American football players, and his note mentioned the National Football League a number of times. Now, it's also been reported that 345 Park Avenue has a number of elevator banks, and it's likely that he took the wrong one. He intended to go to the NFL headquarters, it's thought, but ended up in another elevator bank, which took him to the building management company on the 32nd or 33rd floor of the building. So regardless, even though he took the wrong elevator bank, a very tragic outcome in that building on Park Avenue.
Mitch, we're seeing some of the videos on our screens right now, but how is New York responding in terms of security? But also, I guess, in terms of mental health awareness, now that we've had the mention of CTE, do we know if the gunman was maybe known to authorities before this attack actually occurred?
Yeah, well, first part of your question there, it's reported that Wall Street businesses and large financial companies like Blackstone, the investment management company involved here, are increasing their security today in the wake of this shooting, something that will very much likely provide comfort to a lot of employees who are going through probably a difficult time at the moment. I spent some time in Midtown Manhattan this morning, and it really did feel like in many parts of the city it was business as usual, although there is still a police presence around that building in Park Avenue. As for the shooter's mental health, the New York Police Commissioner said in a press conference, according to our law enforcement partners in Las Vegas, where Mr. Tamura had come from, he has a documented mental health history. His motives are still under investigation. And what we're also seeing today, after the mention of CTE, that brain condition I spoke about, there is a lot more awareness about that today. A lot of people are speaking about it and what that actually means. Of course, that is a brain condition that cannot be properly diagnosed until one's death. It's reported that the shooter in this case asked in that note that I mentioned for his brain to be examined after his death to see whether or not he has CTE. Of course, we don't know whether authorities plan to do anything like that at this stage, but certainly CTE is a key point of discussion here in New York today.
I have to ask, because some of the pictures that have emerged of the shooter have him in what looks like it may be an NFL team jersey. So do we know anything about the shooter and if he was perhaps a player or anything like that?
Yeah, well, what we understand is that he was a football player at the college level. There is no reporting that indicates he played professional football in the NFL. There have been a few cases of CTE in recent years. It's important to note there was even a movie starring Will Smith where the main character was trying to encourage the National Football League to talk more openly about CTE. Of course, the NFL has been heavily criticised over the last decade for a failure to do enough for people with CTE. Of course, this is a condition that really scientists and medical doctors are still learning a lot about. It's something he claims he has, but I say that is yet to be proven at this stage. But yes, he said that he did play football. It's understood at a college level. There's been some discussion of that from former coaches on cable network television here in the US this morning. But still, there are many questions to answer about his football career and what condition he was actually suffering from.
President Trump has jumped in to say the shooting was senseless violence by a crazed lunatic as well. Is that the only comment we've had from the White House on this so far?
Yeah, that is the only comment I've seen from the White House so far. And this is important to note. It goes back to what Donald Trump has been saying in recent months, and especially during the campaign. He's talked about the fact that New York City and a number of American cities aren't safe enough. And although he hasn't alluded to it completely on this instance, it is possible he will talk about this in the coming days. Donald Trump made a very big deal in the campaign about the fact he said New York City, but a lot of other Democrat cities with Democrat mayors were not safe. So this doesn't go very far in proving the president wrong there. So that, I just think, is something that we should watch out for, whether or not he's going to discuss that in the coming days. But of course, we have heard from Eric Adams. We've heard from the governor of New York, who have also described this as a senseless shooting. But I think it is possible we will hear more from the president when he faces the cameras, likely in the coming hours on his trip in the UK.
Mitch, while we have you as well, as you are in New York today, where the UN are meeting about the two-state Palestinian solution and the plans for that as well, which both the US and Israel have boycotted the meeting. Is there any talk about this resulting in some actual action now that we've heard the UK have announced that they will recognise the Palestinian state from September?
I think that is a really good question. I think that's something that many people are asking. I think for the co-chairs of this conference, France and Saudi Arabia, this is more about building momentum and pressure on Israel to pull back, in terms of trying to find a ceasefire and find a humanitarian situation for the people in Gaza. The co-chairs say that the aim here is to mobilise the necessary efforts and resources to achieve the implementation of a two-state solution. So we've heard from a number of countries in recent days talk about the need for a two-state solution. The Secretary General of the United Nations said this isn't just something that should happen. He said it's something that needs to happen, and it's underscored by both international law and a number of UN resolutions. France has already spoken about its plans to recognise a Palestinian state, and now we've heard plans from the UK, literally in the last hour, to do the same unless Israel can follow a number of conditions that the UK is going to set. Here at the United Nations, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary of the UK, has just given a speech in the General Assembly. He's holding a press conference right now. So you can imagine this is going to really dominate the news coverage here at the UN today, and it's going to be talked about around the world. Not just France now planning to recognise Palestine or Palestinian statehood, but the UK saying it's willing to do it if Israel doesn't follow a number of conditions. So a big story here in New York as well today.
Mitch McCann, thank you for your update on both of those stories in New York. At least 17 people are dead and more than 80 are wounded after a Russian airstrike on a Ukrainian prison. 4 aerial bombs hit the Belinkiskaya correctional colony in Zaporizhzhia, the region that has 42 inmates who needed medical care for serious injuries afterwards. The attack took place hours after President Trump's ultimatum to President Putin to end the war. Here's a quick reminder of what he said and also the Kremlin's response.
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
We have taken note of President Trump's statement on shorter deadline for ceasefire in Ukraine. The special military operation continues, and we remain committed to the peace process to settle the conflict in Ukraine and ensure our interests during this settlement.
Let's now get a reaction from Ukrainian MP Kira Rudik. Kira, thank you for joining us on W News. Tell us a bit more about this prison strike that we've seen today. Do you believe it was a deliberate attack on civilians?
We would be very surprised if it was not a deliberate attack on civilians, and it will be honestly perhaps the first times during the full-scale invasion when it would not be a deliberate attack on civilians. We have seen and we have confirmed with our international partners that Russia is attacking civilian infrastructure, homes, schools, kindergartens, train stations, and they have absolutely no remorse and have been doing it since the day one. There has been an enormous amount of statements from our international partners regarding that. But what we have seen is statements do not stop Russia.
Tell us a bit about this correctional facility in Belinkiskaya. What do we know about it and what sort of a facility is it? What sort of inmates are detained there?
So it's one of the facilities that we have in Ukraine. We are unfortunately unable to move all the facilities from closer to the front line, and Russia has again attacked it to kill more Ukrainians as they do. We obviously feel remorse and regret, and we support the relatives of people who were killed there.
Ukraine has said that this is a war crime. What steps are being taken to document this and also to pursue accountability?
We have special teams that are working on documenting war crimes, and we are working with our international partners. Again, so I will be speaking to you not from the information that I'm getting from Ukrainian officials, but so that we will have the confirmation from our partners that what Russia is conducting are war crimes, especially that we have received this year a support from our European partners on setting up a special tribunal that will allow us at some point to make sure that Russia and Russian officials are being held accountable for all kinds of the war crimes that Russia has committed since the beginning of full-scale invasion, in, again, killing the civilians, attacking civilian infrastructure, kidnapping Ukrainian children, kidnapping Ukrainian people, tortures, rapes, all the crimes that they have committed, basically all the crimes from the war crimes list. And we are working very closely and very intensively with our partner to make sure that at some point everybody will have their justice, both Ukrainian people who suffered, but also Russian criminals who committed it.
Kira, are you seeing a pattern now of Russia hitting, as you mentioned there, the civilian targets, so the civilian infrastructure, such as penitentiaries across Ukraine? Are we seeing more of a pattern with that?
This pattern, again, has been there since the beginning of full-scale invasion. Russia is not being able to fulfill their goals at the battlefield. So they keep terrorizing Ukrainians at our peaceful cities, where they are basically trying to kill as many people as possible, to create havoc, to bring in horror, to make sure that Ukrainians are not being as resolute as we were in supporting our army, in fighting back. Russia is failing in it, but what they are able to do is obviously to kill many people. And this is why we keep asking for more air defense systems. This is why we keep working with our partners on closing our skies to be able to protect people who are sleeping in their beds.
How are because we've reports of over 80 people injured, the prison staff are included in that. How are the emergency services coping with the scale of this attack?
Oh, it's the only thing that I can tell you, that we are taking our hats off to our emergency services, who are able to work in really dire conditions, especially that over time we have seen that their work has been even more dangerous, because Russia sometimes repeats the attack at the same place after the emergency services, emergency workers has gathered to remove the rubble, to help the wounded, and they are attacking once again. And this is why it has been a really heroic efforts of our emergency services to be able to help at every attack, and especially at the attacks at scale where you have many wounded, where the attack is really massive. And this is one of the examples to show our partners that no matter the humanitarian support that you're giving us with the fire trucks, with the ambulances, at the attacks like this, you cannot have enough, right? You need all the resources that you can get, and you're getting it throughout the region. And so the tools that we are getting from our partners to act during the tragedies like this, during the terrorist attacks like this, are very critical and allow some people to have chance in surviving.
Kira, Donald Trump now says that Russia has 10 to 12 days to act, or it will face more sanctions. How has that been received in Kiev by you and your colleagues?
With cautious optimism, I would say. We have heard President Trump saying Putin will receive 50 days. So basically all the attacks that happened recently that we discussed with you, they were happening under the allowance of President of the United States, who said, well, this is the time that Putin has. Nobody would think that Putin will use this time to stop the war. He would only use this time to kill more people, and this is what he has been doing. It is good that the President of the United States is finally understanding that there is nothing to talk to Russia about. There's nothing to agree with Putin about, because he will fool you and he is not interested in peace. However, we hope that the President of the United States remains firm, and that he will be able to deliver on his promise of the sanctions, of the pressure onto Russia. Because in May, European leaders have gathered in Kiev and has made very strong statement that if there is no ceasefire, that the very strong sanctions will follow. And after that, there has been at least like 3 or 4 months before the sanctions have taken place. And of course, Russia was taking it as appeasement. So right now, President Trump needs to deliver on his promise, and we hope that he will be firm.
Ukrainian MP Kira Rudik, thank you so much for joining us on W News. At least 30 people have died in Beijing after heavy flooding in northern China overnight. President Xi Jinping has ordered all-out searches to contain and rescue efforts to prevent more casualties. Over 80,000 people in the megacity have already been evacuated, and Patrick Falk has this report.
The day after the deluge, it was time to assess the damage.
The water was higher than that wall, at least 2 meters. Inside the house, it reached about 1 meter. You can see the high water mark. It's all the way up to the table. It must have been a full meter high.
Yang Yanlong's breakfast diner in Beijing's Miyun district was completely washed out. Thick mud caked the floors. A bowl of eggs covered in sludge. Despite the mess and what it's going to cost to clean this all up, Yang and his wife are keeping brave faces.
I just sat there and said to myself, as long as we're still here, that's what matters. That was all I could think, trying to comfort myself. I really felt like crying. Well, what can you do?
Miyun is a mountainous district in the northeastern part of the Chinese capital. It's been the worst hit by days of torrential rains. Most of the deaths recorded as a result of the downpours were in Miyun. Flooding and landslides trapped many residents in their villages. Along the Qingshui River, the force of gushing water smashed through a bridge. The devastation prompted China's leader to call for all-out efforts to fight the floods. This could turn into a major challenge for the government. Many people are still affected, and authorities have mobilized police, firefighters and drones to reach stranded residents and deliver supplies. Here in Huairou district, rescuers guided villagers to safety using ropes to navigate treacherous terrain. Some had to be stretchered away.
People on stretchers are those critically ill elderly individuals. Each step mattered. We carry them with extreme caution.
The intense rainfall over the last few days followed frequent extreme high temperatures in several parts of China. According to the country's emergency management ministry, natural disasters in the first half of the year cost China $7.5 billion in damages. Such extreme weather events are increasingly threatening the economy and people's lives. Patrick Falk, Al Arabiya.
Let's take a look at some of the top business news. British bank Barclays' net profit rose by 34%, sparked by President Trump's trade tariffs. Net profits jumped to $2.3 billion in the 3 months to the end of June. Sharp fluctuations in financial markets were worsened by Trump's sweeping tariffs on global trading partners in April. Spain's black olive exporters face a tough road ahead with new US tariffs. The exporters are warning it will be difficult to survive the extra 15% that they now face under the EU's latest trade deal with the US. The country has seen its share of the US black olive market plummet from 49% to 2017 to 19% last year after Trump's imposed tariffs. To sport now. England's victorious Lionesses have celebrated the Women's Euro 2025 triumph along with ecstatic fans outside Buckingham Palace. The Football Association said that at least 65,000 supporters gathered to cheer and witness the trophy lift. The squad defended their European title with a 3-1 penalty shootout victory in the Euro 2025 final in Basel on Sunday. And Manchester United have made Ollie Watkins and Benjamin Sesko their preferred targets as they continue their search for a new striker. Watkins and Sesko are top of the list after Hugo Ekitike joined Liverpool and Victor Gyökeres signed for Arsenal. The right offer could tempt Villa to part with Watkins, who was the subject of an $80 million bid from Arsenal. And a final reminder of our top stories. The UK Prime Minister announces the UK will recognise Palestine as a state by September unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire. In New York, 4 people are dead, including a police officer, after a gunman opened fire inside a Manhattan skyscraper. And the Kremlin responds to Trump's deadline ultimatum, defending its ongoing military operations in Ukraine as 17 people are killed by Russian airstrikes. That's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on X. The Real Deal and Counterpoints are both coming up next, and we'll be back in just a couple of hours with W News Extra. But for now, goodbye.